The good thing about watches is there's always something happening. Bremont released a pink Terranova. George Kern talked about pricing for the Universal Geneve brand. Rolex raised their prices. A couple of other things happened as well. I have some thoughts. Let's dive in. Bremont Terranova pink. Let's park for a moment the Bremont relaunch. It wasn't good. The new watches were not great. But a couple of weeks ago, they released a limited edition 38mm pink Terranova. Bremont? Seriously? I'm just going to list some of the problems. $3,800 for a Sellita SW200 non-COSC certified watch. Bremont has tried to position themselves as a value alternative, and this is so far from value that you can possibly get, regardless of whichever grade of Sellita they're using. Now, who's this watch for? In theory, it might be for women's wrists, but I've worn variants of this watch, and despite its on-paper short lug-to-lug, it wears larger than you would expect. And besides, if it's for women, is the only thing you could seriously come up with pink? Pink has also been popping up often this last couple of years. Tudor did the Chrono, Zenith have done a couple. I just really hope Pepto-Bismol pink doesn't catch on as a color on watches. Also, this is a limited edition 250 piece affair. Are there seriously 250 people that want this watch? I mean, fair enough, there are 8 billion people on the planet, but 250 to me seems high. Universal Geneve. Monochrome Watches did an interview with George Kern from Breitling about the Universal Geneve relaunch. You should go and read it. It's a pretty good article. I took note especially of a couple of things. George Kern said that a non-complicated time-only watch would likely start at $15,000. Universal Geneve were never quite Patek in their level, but they, as far as I understand, were also never a value brand. So what I'm saying is I'm not entirely sure what I was hoping for, but maybe I was thinking that pricing would be something like JLC, so 8 to 12K for a time only. But 15,000, that's a really high starting point. He also said something that got me a teeny tiny bit worried. I'm going to put it on the screen. Developing an entirely new and high-end chronograph movement is extremely costly. It would potentially push the price for a stainless steel chronograph to 25,000 Swiss francs or more. That's not where we want to position ourselves. Our approach to movements will vary depending on the type, whether it's a classic automatic, a micro rotor, or a chronograph. In the context of the video, he was talking mainly about a chronograph movement, but the way he phrased things about movements, I didn't get the impression that the movement would be fully original or fully in-house. Statements like synergies with and overlaps to Breitling were made. He did say they wanted Universal Geneve to be independent, but there were just statements made that indicate that you might foresee some reworked Kinesi architecture or the B01 in a reworked version. I really, really hope that they don't go down that route. Back when I did my Universal Geneve video, the key to UG being a success was very much the movements. A Universal Geneve with a Breitling movement is not going to cut it at $15,000. Now, to be fair, that's not what he said, but he also didn't say fully in-house. He didn't say fully original to Universal Geneve. It was the absence of that kind of statement that got me worried. For 15,000K for a time-only watch, they really need to be hand detailing that watch and that movement to a stellar level. Otherwise, I'm out. I didn't like the Alex APs. I hate the Spider-Man. I thought the Cactus Jack was pretty cool. I have no idea who this Kaws thing is. For some odd reason, I like this watch. It's the Royal Oak concept. It's weird. It's over the top. It's not classic in any way, shape, or form. But I like it. I thought it's fun. Good on you, AP. It's been a while, but I thought I'd touch on GPHG as well, which I usually don't follow that much. Whether it's the Oscars or the Golden Globes or the Brit Awards, I've never really gravitated towards them because there's a tastemaker component that doesn't speak to me. However, IWC got the Grand Privé for the Eternal Calendar, and I have to give it to them. It's entirely deserved. The mechanics and the mathematics that go into building a watch that is accurate to, I don't know, like 45 million years, that's just cool. And looks wise, I think there's too much going on for the watch to actually be wearable, but getting from the math to the digital model to the mechanical implementation is just super, super impressive. It's well deserved, and as long as they don't do one in pink, I'm happy. The big one is probably the Rolex price increases. I suppose I'm a little bit late to the party since everybody else did their Rolex 2025 price increase video a couple of weeks ago. I didn't because I needed a vacation, and I also needed just some time to give it some more thought. Since then, I've watched a lot of videos and read a lot of the info about the price increases, and the broad consensus was that Rolex was continuing to move upmarket. Platinum and steel increases 1 to 3%, two-tone goes up 3 to 6% depending on the model. Full gold increases are somewhere between 7 and 15% depending on the model. I just don't think those people that drew the conclusions that Rolex was moving upmarket are correct in any way. The grey market dealers were talking about how it doesn't make sense to raise prices when some of the models are already trading below retail on the grey market. This is, to me, just completely flawed logic. Rolex doesn't make their pricing decisions based on what the secondary market is doing. Their current CEO was also quoted a couple of years back, and he actually said it several times that he does not want his watches to be seen as an investment, and he also does not have a business goal of Rolex watches maintaining their prices on the secondary market. He wants Rolex watches to be desirable, but having watches resell under retail is not a failure in his eyes. Also, considering that Omega historically used to sell 20 or 30% under retail in the secondary market, and other brands easily sell for half, a relatively low production gold Rolex that sells for 6 or 7% under retail on the secondary market is actually, in the grander scheme of things, perfectly fine. This idea that Rolex is supposed to sell above retail is just nonsense. I'm sure grey market dealers would love it because it indicates to them that there's a low risk market with high rewards for them, but it's not the goal of Rolex, and historically it hasn't been the norm for the vast majority of watches across all brands sold in the world. I honestly think that Rolex has been quite restrained this time, and the reason I think is fairly transparent. They raised gold watches with 14%. Last year, the average price of gold has increased 26%. Platinum has dropped in price in 2024. Steel has remained more or less the same. Inflation is still above 3 or 4% in most Western markets. This is Rolex being restrained. On entry models, they're below inflation, and on gold, they're taking a hit because of the high cost of gold. If you kind of squint, you could actually argue that Rolex have gotten cheaper. I mean, if you got a 3% salary increase and the steel sub only got 1% more expensive, it's relatively speaking cheaper for you. Well, I mean, obviously it's not really because it was much more expensive before, but just don't listen to the grey dealers when it comes to these kind of pricing things. Let's not talk politics, but I have to talk about the Trump watch. And I just have to say, if you like the Trump victory watch and you think it's good, there's clearly something wrong with you. $1,299 is a ripoff. This case is a ripoff of the Submariner. The DLC black is the laziest of coatings. It could have been carbon, it could have been ceramic. It's anything but that. It's just DLC. The PRX will get you a forged carbon case at $1,200. The bracelet is a ripoff of the Rolex Jubilee. The caseback isn't even DLC coated. The movement is an NH35. I know for a fact that an NH35 costs less than $40. Even with semi-precious stones, this watch is at best worth $400. Spend your money elsewhere regardless of your political affiliations. That's it for this time around. Let me know if you like this style of content, what your thoughts are about Universal Geneve's pricing, and if you can do it without a temper tantrum, Rolex's new pricing. See you in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.